Hi, Roger. How are
Hi,
you?
good, good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to our newest episode of the Fashion Clinic podcast. Today we're going to be interviewing Roger Loayza, who is a very talented Peruvian designer. Actually, you're much more than a designer. Tell us a bit more about yourself, your experience, what you do.
Well, thank you for having me, Ale. I love this opportunity to chat about my work. What do I do? I'm mainly a designer. I have done other things because I do like to explore other creative parts of life, I guess. So I've done some art direction sometimes and styling projects and stuff of the sort. But my core and what really inspires me and what gives me the most satisfaction and happiness is designing and creating collections. Um, that I was talking to a friend yesterday that works in advertising. I was telling him how I was telling you a bit before. I was thinking about my following collection, and I already thought about how I would want to present it, even though it's sort of like a conflict with the actual concept of the collection. And that's what makes me think that one of the aspects I like the most about my job is storytelling. And I think that's a really important part of every collection of mine. I try to tell a story through it. I try to make a point regarding uh, any topic of interest that like I might be interested at the moment, or some issue that I'm concerned about. That I think that is probably something that's a constant throughout my work.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very familiar with your work, and one of the things I admire the most is basically how everything is so conceptualized and how it's so clear through communication, through vision, everything. You have a very coherent idea usually of what you want to portray, and I love that.
I think that's probably something you will find in anyone, any sort of like art discipline or design discipline, where you have I can hear my dog there. You can have what do you call it? Like a very solid concept. It's sort of like a matrix for everything else to develop. So once you create that, everything else like just like spreads out from it, you know, the clothes, the styling, what the accessories are going to be like, what's the campaign going to be like, what's the music for the show going to be like. Lots and lots of things just come out from creating that. And I think that probably applies, like I was saying, for any other like design or art discipline. Like if you're a graphic designer and you're creating the identity for a brand, you need to kind of like have that really really clear, and then like maybe like your color palette will spread from that. If you're an architect and you're designing a space, maybe your choice of materials will also depend on how well conceptualized your project is. So to me, and the way I work, I know designers work in many different ways. To me, that really helps a lot. So when that's not clear, or when that takes a lot more time to process, it's usually when I have a harder time, because then I start doubting things um, uh, throughout the creation of the collection. It is also something that may work against you sometimes. Because like if you want to stay this like close to like a storyline, or like a script for a collection,
Mhm.
sometimes you may not allow yourself to go a bit off the grid, you know, creatively, and maybe you're missing the chance to use some idea that might come up in the moment that could really go well, or add that little touch of something that will sort of like shake the whole collection a bit. I know I'm making myself clear,
Oh
but
yeah.
I mean, I allow that to happen still, but I think it's good to also allow it to go to happen in a more free way sometimes.
So having like a specific point, but also allowing for some creative flow
Yes.
within the
Yeah.
process.
Definitely. Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about your work as a designer. Like how have you developed as a designer throughout these past years that you've been working?
I usually have two collections a year, ready to wear collections. And then something that's really popular here in Peru is made to measure clothing. So I have a lot of clients, like private clients, that will come for custom made ideas or custom made dresses that sometimes, or like I make menswear as well, but this last collection was only women's wear. And for example, they will pick something from the collection and it will have to be adapted to them. Sometimes they want the exact same thing. I try to avoid that regarding my custom made pieces because I wouldn't want the same person with the same dress. So I do always want to have for each piece to have a sort of different twist, you know. And then you have people that just come in for dresses for like parties or weddings when we had parties and special events. I know, and they will come in just for just anything random for them, and that kind of work is completely different. For example, I do brides as well, but I do very few brides because it's very, for at least here in Lima, it's very difficult for a bride to come in and be completely how do you say this? Just give you like a lot of freedom to create whatever you have in mind for them. You know, they usually have a very set idea. So I get along and I'm more successful, I think, in my work when the client gives me some sort of like a few ideas, you know, which I can work with and then create something of my own that will reflect her personality as well. There is a lot of psychology in that part of my work, like getting to know the client, asking her or him several questions regarding taste in music and art, activities they like to do, how they met, if they're getting married, how they meet their husband or wife, things where I can draw ideas from. And that maybe they might not show up in a very explicit way, but maybe the idea for an embroidered or beaded detail will spring from that, you know? So all that information, all that collecting of information is kind of similar to the way I collect information for when I create a collection, because I know I have an idea and then I start thinking about other things, and then I do a lot of research. Research is basic, it's fundamental for the creation of anything, I think. So yeah, that's how my work kind of goes, you know. And well, I was going to go into a concept store, a really new concept store that a friend of mine opened. This is the second time I was going to go into it because I was going to go in last year, but then the pandemic happened. And now I was going to go again about a month ago, but then we got a second lockdown here in Peru. So it's kind of difficult at the moment to know like what I'm going to do. I mean, I want to go into it, for example, but it's difficult regarding like, does it make any sense to go now at the end of summer? Should I go with a new winter collection? Like, where do I stand? And also try like guessing what the mood of the people here is going to be, you know. So it's kind of an interesting moment because I think you just have to like guess and sort of like do a little trial and error, and then again at the same time I think that like the most successful creations or collections come when you really stay true to yourself and are not that dependent on the public. I mean, I'm taking it into account because our lifestyles have changed definitely, you know. People are buying more top parts than bottoms because they're always on Zoom meetings, for example. They're not going out as much, so they won't be wearing that much like evening wear or stuff that's like very flashy or like beaded, etc., you know. So that is the information I will take in, but then the rest is like what my mood is, you know, because it's like what do I have to say that sets me apart from the rest of the designers here?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I really enjoyed what you said about the difference between your work when you work directly with a customer or when you work for like creating a collection that you're going to sell with
Yes, it's very different.
a customer in mind, a specific customer in mind. And I really like what you said about like the psychology behind it, because there is so much psychology when you're working so closely with a person, and especially when you're creating something as personal as a wedding dress, for example.
Exactly, because like many times, like the brides can come in with a very fixed idea that you know you can immediately know it won't be flattering for them, for example. Yet they have this idea because they have the idea that this is what a bride should look like, and maybe they haven't thought of other possibilities or things that will work well with them, you know. And those are the most rewarding experiences actually, when they just like actually shift and this is going to sound really, really cheesy, but they learn a bit more about themselves through the process as well, you know, because they're like, I never thought this was me, but then they relate, they identify, and that's really, really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your latest collection.
My latest collection has been probably one of the ones. It's funny how they say how you like your latest collection the most every time, but it had been a while since I was this excited about a collection. It was very fun to make. I had the idea in my mind last year when the pandemic started, but I didn't get to work until later on because I procrastinated a lot. I went to baking and doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. So I shouldn't have I wouldn't have gained any weight, for example. But I caught up with work because I had a show. It was like a virtual fashion show together with other designers here in Lima for November of last year. So once you have a date, you need to work for it, and there's no way out. It's funny because I was listening to a podcast about procrastinators in general, and I relate that I work under pressure a lot better. So there is a positive aspect to it, not always, but there is a positive aspect to it. And things just start getting done somehow. I don't know how it works. My idea for the collection, to explain the concept, the first part was escapism. It was an idea that I had because I everybody I talked to, they were like, I can't wait till this is over so I can travel and go away and just get away from all this mess. I can't stand the idea of being trapped, etc. So that was an idea that was in the air. I always try to tap into the zeitgeist somehow, not on purpose, but it's I want to get the feeling of the moment somehow. So that was a starting point. I also related this to something that I think has happened in fashion before. For example, after 9/11, I feel many collections also dealt with the subject of escapism in very different ways. If you analyze different collections, you have, for example, just a little bit, Prada, for example, came up with that really, the pajama trend, really strong, they were one of the first. So I imagined the person that did not want to deal with reality and wanted to stay at home in bed and not deal with it. On the other hand, you had Louis Vuitton with Marc Jacobs, and this fairy tale collections with totes for purses, very inspired in Snow White and Alice in Wonderland, escapism into fantasy and getting away from reality. So I think it is something that happens, especially after some sort of tragic moment or something that shakes us up a bit. So that I knew I wanted to work with that, especially because I was living with it and hearing it all the time. On the other hand, my dad passed away last year in May. And this was something, my relationship with my dad was not one that was perfect at all. So it was funny how much how much of him, this is getting very personal, but how much of him I had neglected within myself. And after he passed away, I started recognizing all these traits that I had. So he was more present. And the fact that he was more present reminded me of a song he would sing all the time called Hawaii Bombay, or Hawaii Bombay, that's in English, but in Spanish it rhymes. It's a song by a Spanish group called Mecano, which says Hawaii, Bombay are two types of paradises, which to my dad seemed so absurd. He would always sing it, not because he liked the song, but just because he thought it was such an absurd chorus, okay? So it's something he probably would say every single day of his life. So I was thinking of escapism. I was thinking of my dad. I found an old Hawaiian shirt of his, and I was like, okay, Hawaii is coming into the picture somehow. Maybe the character of my collection is trying to leave Peru and go to Hawaii and escape everything and go to the beach in a very frivolous attitude, to say so. Okay, so that's how it started. I knew that was the starting point of the collection, but I just didn't want to be just another summer resorty kind of collection. I always want some sort of conclusion or some sort of input on my behalf. Not when I did the heartbreak collection, remember? Yes. A few years ago, I just didn't want it to be about heartbreak. I wanted it to be about heartbreak and how you recover from heartbreak, Otherwise, it would have been a bit too easy, repetitive, etc. So the character of my collection leaves Peru, goes to Hawaii, into this fantasy, this fabulous resort and beach and the sun and sunsets, etc. But then when she's there, she comes face to face with a volcano. This is all in my mind, okay? So once she faces a volcano, she realizes that she can't just really escape problems just like that, but that she needs to face them. And a volcano to me is a metaphor for both destruction and rebirth. So this comes to play an important role in my collection because I feel that sometimes good things come from when we're under a lot of pressure and under a lot of heat. Diamonds actually get expelled into the earth through volcanoes. Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting aspect to explore as well. That's the main concept. It sounds very conceptual. I think that was one of the challenges I faced. The fact that it was so conceptual and that it had a lot of potential for more conceptual kind of clothing, but then I needed to sell this. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to make this into very wearable things for people now. So it was an interesting exercise to actually explore the concept and then at the same time make things that are wearable, but that would allow people to fantasize. Because I think people were actually, it was all cool with sweatpants and like loungewear, whatever you want, but I think that that was just for a period of time. People want to go into other kinds of clothing now, you know, comfy stuff and things that are practical, but something that will make you feel good. And fashion has that power. So that's how my collection started to develop. I realized there were things that needed to be very like easy to wear, or that would have multiple functions, or that would actually allow you to be a part of the story, but not in an explicit way. So then I worked out with a lot of prints for the first time. I've done prints before, but this is the first time that I actually went into it like with a lot of ideas. So because my character is trying to escape one, and because my dad passed away, one of the topics was how much we take for granted and how many things we overlook sometimes just because they're near us. And this came to me because a lot of people started traveling within Peru because they were not allowed to leave the country. So I was like, okay, let's take this idea and make it into a print. So I thought of Paracas, which is down south of Lima, you know, it's a beach resort for those who've never been here. And then I thought of Gocta waterfalls. And I was like, these are two places, one that I like and I go to often, Paracas, and Gocta is a place I've never been to. So I worked that into the prints and created a more surreal idea of this travel spot. Like I added a volcano in Paracas. There's no volcanoes in Paracas. I added some crystals as well, as if the places were trying to entice us to go visit them, like getting like all like embellished or something to get us to go see them. So that was part of the idea. And then also because I feel that we've actually come to use technology in a positive way. One of the positive outcomes of the pandemic is that we're actually using social media and apps like these to communicate. Before, we probably used them to distract each other, like ourselves, while we were like actually interacting in real life. You know, you'd be having lunch or dinner with somebody, and you're on your phone. And now we actually learn to use it in a positive way. So I was thinking how vital social media has been now to keep us connected and to be able to tell what we were going through, be it we were sad, happy, traveling in our house, baking, whatever. And then I thought, how is it that we actually told these stories before social media? So I was reminded, I'm 40, I was born in 1980. I was reminded of slides and how you would get your family together before and get your slides on this like reel or whatever you call it, and project these images on the wall to share your latest trip. And that naturally took me to the Viewmaster, this little toy that I used to have, and I think a lot of people had, because it's actually from the 50s, I think, but I got it in the 80s. And how you would be able to travel through these reels, which coincidentally, that's what reels are called on Instagram now,
Yeah.
and go into movie sets or into different travel destinations, etc. So I knew I wanted that because I always have an element of nostalgia in my collections, and I knew I wanted that. It was something that's really I have a strong feeling for it. It evokes many, many memories. So what I did was use that as a print, but to make it my own, I inserted the other two prints in the little squares where you would see the images. So it was a really nice result. And a lot of people actually related to it, which is nice. There is a lot of other aspects regarding the collection. Like when I did my research, because I was thinking of my dad and Hawaii and traveling, I started looking for artists that he liked that had been traveling to Hawaii, for example. This was like a random idea. He loved Natalie Wood, okay? And he actually got the chance to see her once in Hollywood, like while she was filming a movie, he got invited to the set or something. It was something he really cherished, a memory he cherished. So I was like, okay, let's look for Natalie Wood vacationing in Hawaii. And I got some silhouettes from there and the idea that I wanted some knitwear as well. I tried to make the knitwear with this new thread that has come at Itesa, this factory here, that mixes cotton with recycled polyester. That was the ideal fiber for me. Mm-hmm. However, the colors did not work with the collection, and unfortunately, I had to let go of that idea. Because sustainability and doing things that are friendly with the environment is important to me. You know me, but like, I mean, I've been a vegetarian for over 28 years. I've been a vegan now for 2 years. The environment concerns me in general. And I
reflected in your work. Absolutely.
It's there somehow. I've never done any leather, any furs, nothing that involves animal skins in general. I'm trying to move away from animal fibers, which I succeeded in doing in this season because it's a lot easier to do it in summer. I don't know how winter's going to work out regarding that. So there's a lot of other aspects. I don't know what else you want me to tell you about the collection. Um, but it was a very fun story to tell, and I'm really happy with the results.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very clear. It's everything you're saying is it's coming to life now that I've seen the campaign, I've seen the pictures, and I'm definitely going to share
Mhm.
those on our social media. So don't worry. So everyone
Amazing.
gets a chance to look at them.
Yeah,
Um,
so they understand.
but now that we are talking about materials, that was really interesting. How do you source your materials in Peru, or is it challenging? Like how you were saying, is it challenging when you can't really when you're limited by a color palette, for example? How do
Uh-huh.
you,
Uh-huh.
how do you handle those
That
challenges?
has happened to me before, for example, regarding color palettes. I remember back in like 2008, I did a collection inspired by She-Ra, the comic, the cartoon from the 80s. It was like a parallel between She-Ra and power dressing of the 80s. That was the theme for the collection. And I was invited to present a collection in Paris to promote alpaca, for example. And because it was 80s and She-Ra and etc., I wanted fuchsia, I wanted purple and bright colors that were not available for me at all, especially in the amounts I required. So if I wanted to actually get this fabric and that specific color, I would have to dye hundreds of meters in order to get things done, which is not a reality for my audience here in Peru. Um, so this time, the fact that I created the prints actually gave me a lot more freedom somehow, because I was allowed to work with different methods of printing. Um, and one of them is digital printing, which is the first time I've ever done that, which works on natural fibers, specifically on 100% cotton fabrics. So I was really happy to create something of my own. There's a different, I guess it's like when you create a fabric from the thread, from the fiber, it was a similar feeling because it was something authentic in mine. It's not like I was actually taking somebody else's like ready-made creation and then making it mine. This was like mine from the beginning. It's like it has like your trademark somehow. So digital printing, the advantage of it is that it doesn't create a lot of residue or any residue. Like no dyes will go into the water because it's not a traditional kind of printing. And there's no like, it's probably one of the most eco-friendly methods to print fabrics. So that was really nice. I was happy that I actually found a factory that managed to work with the quantities I required, because that's also a challenge.
Challenge, yeah.
And then regarding knitwear, I work I've been working with the same person that knits for me for a while now, for over 10 years. And he has like a small group of people that work with him. So that's always been interesting and good. And I'm happy to be able to work with him, especially now that because of the pandemic, a lot of people like actually were out of work in general. So that was good. And then I wanted to involve this like sort of like recycling, reusing idea within the collection, but I was not able to use the thread that I told you about. But then I was like, maybe there are other ways. So I had worked with a group of artisans from the jungle last year for some hats that I made and some accessories, and I wanted to work with them again. Through a friend of mine, she's created this brand called Jane Artisans because she's like as in Jane of the Jungle. And because she's a feminist and she's always thought it's like women have to explain to men like you Tarzan, me Jane, like that. She's always has this really condescending attitude, which I think is really hilarious. But the thing is that she works with artisans from all parts of the jungle, with like really remote areas, places that actually take about like 2 days to travel to get to. And she's the real deal because she studied fashion design with me. She's a bit older than I am. And she's an anthropologist and she has an MBA. So she knows how to communicate with these people because they're a completely different kind of lifestyle and beliefs, etc. You know, and then she also helps them realize how to put a price on their products, okay, which is really important, so that people actually make progress and are not just stuck like forever in poverty or you know make no progress whatsoever, which is what always happens with brands and designers that say that work with artisans or whatever, and they still get paid nothing, you know. And she guarantees that doesn't happen. So I was happy to work with her again. And I was thinking, I need some shoes for this collection. This person that's traveling, this is why I was explaining how important the matrix for the concept is. I was like, this person is traveling. She's going to this place where there's volcanoes. So there's no way she's like in stilettos, but she's not in flats either. She's fantasizing about this trip. So I realized I needed some sort of like platform that would work. No, especially because I didn't want my models at the show that I was going to have in November to look much shorter than the rest of the designers. So I made this sandal. It's like a platform sandal, which the platform per se is like very trendy now. It's probably the trendiest aspect I have within, or item I have within the collection, that reminds me of 90s utilitarian fashion.
Mhm.
Like Prada, and like the the backpacks that just had like one little strap in the front, and like the very like all these pockets and things, and the shoes were very much like this as well. So I knew that kind of like symbolized our current like lifetime, or like lifespan, and the use of technology, etc. So I needed something that would make up for it, and actually create yet again another metaphor for how I believe we need to work. I mean, we need to take the advantages of technology and what we've learned in science, etc. But we need to acknowledge and respect all our heritage, all our artisanship, especially in countries like Peru, and blend these things together. So the straps for the sandals were hand woven, vegetable fiber, hand dyed also by these women in the jungle. So that takes a while to get here, because they work in a sustainable manner. They grow their own crops. They have to wait till they can actually cut them down. Then they have to wait for the correct weather for them to dry, so that they can dye them, dry again, and then weave them. So it's quite a process. It looks very simple in the end when you see it's a strap and a color, but there's a lot of work behind it. So that was one thing that I did, and I was happy to make an absolutely vegan shoe, which is something I've always had an issue with. Whenever I've had other collections, usually I've worked with other designers that just do specialty shoes, and I've only once have I had the chance to have like vegan shoes, and this is like the second time. And the fact they were made by myself, or by my people, or the people I worked with, it was a great satisfaction. And then the other part of the accessories were the bags. These were this is a really like happy aspect again for me, because I was thinking about this character in the collection, how she travels, and how important transformation is. She goes into this trip in Hawaii with a mindset of just like staying away from all trouble and avoiding everything that's uncomfortable. But she returns having learned that she must face these things, and that she returns a transformed person. So one aspect of traveling that all of us ignore is how much trash we create when we travel, I think. Like if you're having your little fabulous caipirinha in Rio de Janeiro, and you have your plastic glass, you're just thinking about the fun time you're having, not the fact that you're probably going to be drinking 6 or 7 of those, and that's going to be 6 or 7 plastic glasses in the trash that you're creating just now, you and then the rest of thousands of people on the beach. So I remembered I went to this restaurant called La Balanza. I don't think you ever went there here in Lima. And they used to have placemats that were knit out of single-use plastic bags. And I remember that. So I talked to my friend who was one of the owners, but he didn't know who made them. So then all he knew was that they were made in Lobitos in the north of Peru. So then I talked to Mariano Brecha, because I think you know him as a surfer and an adventure sports kind of guy. And I was like, do you know anyone in Lobitos? And then he got me in touch with this other guy, and this other guy with the guy that actually worked with these women. So that took a while, and we made some bags out of these recycled plastic bags. And the good thing is that a percentage of these bags were made actually from bags that were picked from the beaches. Oh. So I love how that came together. And one idea that I have in the future, that because this is distant and COVID and traveling is complicated right now, one idea that I have for the accessories is the fact that maybe you as a client can collect your single-use plastic bags for a month or 2 months, then give them to me, and I will knit your bag with your own trash. I would love to do that. So that's an idea. Wouldn't that be nice? Like to actually feel that your trash is actually becoming useful. I mean, it's a double joy, I think. Once it's for me, and like you're giving work to these women in Lobitos, and then that you just didn't just waste that plastic. It's something that you're going to use again, probably for a very long time, because the material is pretty resistant. So that managed to work its way into the collection in a really, I mean, I had to work hard to get it done, but it just went with the collection. It just flowed somehow, and I was really happy because it was the point I wanted to make. And I think another aspect that I like about these things is that they don't have to be explicit. I don't like when artisan made things are explicitly like artisanal, or recycled things are like obviously recycled. I like the fact that it's more of a camouflaged approach. Um, Also because I just don't want it to be the main aspect. I want you to appreciate the design, everything, and then know that this is a plus, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that idea that you just said about the plastic bags and like the customizable with your own trash, that is
Yeah.
genius, and you should definitely go for something like that.
Yeah, send me your trash. And the thing is that all these send me your I don't mean human trash. No, just send but I mean the fun thing about these bags is that I had no say regarding the patterns. There was just very like this is like the women's input, you know, like what they wanted to do with the plastic bags, what their artistic nature told them to do, you know.
Did you
I
give
would
them
like
any
to have
framework, or like did you tell them this is what our or no, it was
nothing,
their
nothing,
creative
nothing.
input it up?
Yes,
Wow.
that's their idea. I mean, I want more input, and I knew that's what I wanted initially. I wanted it to be like very my design because I'm a control freak when it comes to this.
Mhm.
But because of the circumstances, because of the traveling restrictions, because of everything, there was no way that I was either gonna have this or nothing. So in the end, I think it was a positive outcome of this whole situation because it's more authentic somehow, you know. It hasn't been commanded by me. The shape of the bag is mine, the other materials is mine, etc. But it has a large portion of them in it, and I think that's important.
Well, you've managed to create a collection that includes materials that are very, very diverse, it's very sustainable, and
Mhm.
and you work with people from different parts of the country. So that's very,
Yeah.
very interesting and very valuable.
Yes, I'm happy because I've lived abroad. Well, I've been living in Peru for 20 years, and I've never actually done anything that has dealt with Peru. Like I've never worked a Peruvian theme for a collection. This is the closest I've ever been with my prints, for example, especially, and then how the rest of the things worked out. And we were talking about sourcing materials, and one thing that I mentioned in another interview a while ago, I said that like all of us Peruvian designers or people that make clothes in Peru should be really grateful that we're stuck in this country because you have access to everything you need to make the items. You know, you have the fibers, you have the fabrics, you have the workshops, you have the artisans, you have everything to make it. And I think regardless of what I make or anything, a product made in Peru is probably a product that has very little carbon footprint, you know, because you just like it's all made here. So it's not like you had to import the fiber from wherever and then send it and have it woven somewhere else and then just, you know. So that is a huge benefit, and I think that is something that we need to enforce in Peru, and actually something that is giving Peruvian products a great value. Regarding the artisans, for example, I have a lot of other designer friends that work with artisans, and you know how we've been talking about fair trade and all these issues. It's something that has been happening here for a while. Maybe it's not out there in the news, but like I have friends that work with women that knit or that embroider in the Andes, and they've been working with them for several years. And I had to actually give a speech on this at Bubble at a fair in London like 4 years ago, and I mentioned how because of this work, women have become the breadwinners of their families in many cases, and how that changes how a family works within a very male dominated country as Peru is, you know, it allows them to work all the time while they're watching their kids also because they get together and do this with their kids. So it's really interesting how all this works, you know, and I think probably more Peruvian designers need to involve them more like into their work.
Yeah, and definitely that's something that me, I have a brand as well, and
Yeah.
we're slowly stepping towards. We're working more
It's
with
not easy. It's
artisans.
not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's
No, it's not easy, and there's a lot. Excuse me.
it should be easier because there's so much
Yes.
talent and there's
Yeah.
so much potential, but there's a lot of bureaucracy that stands in the way sometimes.
Yes, bureaucracy and also um, people that are not transparent in between that
Mhm.
might not get like maybe you think you're doing something really good by giving these people work and maybe the money is actually not getting to them as it should. So
Yeah,
there's a lot
personality.
of factors. Yeah, that's complicated.
Yeah, it is absolutely. But you've done an amazing job with this latest collection.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Absolutely,
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Before we end, I just wanted to ask you, just as a Peruvian designer, give us your perspective on Peruvian fashion and how you see it developing within a more global framework, a more international market.
Well, what I mentioned just now about being a product that's wholly made in one place, I think is something people will actually value a lot. If there is more artisanal work involved, that is also something that customers worldwide are valuing a lot for a while now. Regarding design, I feel that now you can pinpoint like or like actually differentiate different designers in Peru. Like you can tell this is this style, this is this guy's style. There that is developing. It is something that still needs to develop a lot more because unfortunately, I think Peruvian culture is a culture that promotes um, blending in general. You know, it's not a culture that promotes individuality or exploring fashion in your own way. So the people that actually buy um, non-traditional Peruvian designer clothing is a very small group and a
Mhm.
group that wants to stand out or a group that values design. Um, so I think there is design in Peru. It just needs to be probably advertise more and understand how we work here as well. Like I said, the fact that we work with natural fibers in one place, that our carbon footprint is very, very small. Uh, the way we've been working, I think it's funny because because everything like in my own experience, for example, I always long to be able to keep up with the pace abroad, like like spring, summer, resort, pre-fall, fall, etc. And I've never worked that way. I've only done two collections, and the collections I make are sold immediately after they're presented. It's not like a season in advance, like it's abroad in general. And you see that slowly the world is adapting to that in a way. Some designers are showing their collections and making their pieces available immediately. It's kind of slowing down. So I think that also works in our favor in the way we've been working now. I just do feel um, it just needs to be more advertised, and I guess that's it. I guess that's it. I mean, I think there is. I don't know if you can call it a Peruvian style of design. Like you can maybe like identify in other places, but there are individual voices now. And I think customers around the world are interested in that. They don't want to get the same Prada dress in Milan that they can get in New York. They want to get something that's more unique, or there's only four pieces made. It's also, I think, something that not pertaining particularly to the subject of Peru, but I feel that because we've been educated, I guess, into instant gratification, and we want things immediately. We want things made immediately, and we probably don't understand the process that there is behind, which then takes a toll on designers or creative directors and brands in general. People will understand the value of something that perhaps is not mass produced, something that takes more time to make, something that you may actually have to wait to receive. I was at a conference here from some people from Denim City, which is a school in Amsterdam, sponsored or created by the big names in denim that are trying to make up for all the environmental damage that the denim industry has done for all the years. So now they're trying to find alternatives. I remember one of the things they mentioned is a store, I think in Amsterdam, where you go, you try on the denim pant, the jeans, right? And you make an order and then you pick them up a week afterwards. So this way they control their stock and they don't have like leftover items after the season is over. So it's less trash and less pollution. And I don't think it's going to just change immediately, but I think people will understand that. So that might work with some designers that work here this way, that make things just on order, or like you have this much time to get on the waiting list for these items. I just think we need more advertising to get more out there, more PR efforts, perhaps.
To the world, you mean?
Yes, yeah, to the world, exactly, exactly. And I think some of the designers here are doing their job. Like Mose Matin, that have you seen her?
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
been working her stuff. She's been doing a lot of good
Positioning
PR
yourself
work.
really well. Yeah.
yeah. So I think she was selling at Liberty for a bit, like or like I think it was a pop-up thing or something. I'm not sure. And yeah, just I think people are thirsty for new things. So if the design is concise and it's a well-made product, they will. There's like, why would you resist it?
Yeah, and I think the world in general has like a greater interest in different cultures and in things that are different nowadays, and we're so connected. So just
Yes.
and there's so many brands emerging from so many different countries. Like, and for me as a client, I want to get to know these brands instead of buying from
Yeah.
the same old big retailers that I've been buying. You know, I think we're all growing,
Exactly.
evolving as customers and as creators.
Definitely. Because it's funny, but I think that has to deal also with our concept of luxury, for example, to begin with, how we've thought luxury is a certain thing and like a certain like tag and a certain price, etc. And we need to understand the luxury of something that is specially made for you, that takes a certain process, that respects the people that make it to begin with, you know? It's we need to change our concepts regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Raji. Is there
Thank you.
anything
It's
else
been
you'd
very
like
fun.
to add or tell us about
Anything
yourself?
I'd like to add? No, well, you're gonna show some pictures, I guess, and I understand
I
when you see the
will.
pictures of the campaign. One of the inspirations for the campaign was 90s videos like Blur's Girls and Boys and Ace of Base's Beautiful Life, because they reminded me of like the models are cut out like in a very disorderly manner on purpose on this background because it reminded me of the videos, and also because I think it's our current reality with Zoom meetings, how we fake our backgrounds and we can fantasize about traveling or being somewhere else. So that's
Love
the
that
whole
you
point behind
repeated
the.
it, right? It's so so good. And it does have a very 90s feel to it
It does,
now that
doesn't it?
I'm thinking
And
about it.
and the song for the video, Voyage, Voyage, is one of my favorite songs from all my life. And the first, it's funny because I was listening to the song, it says Voyage, Voyage, which is like travel, travel in French. And the first line, it says like flying over all old volcanoes. So it was great how it all fit together. I was very happy about that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. It's been lovely to talking to you, and best of luck for what's coming.
Yeah, for all of us. Thank you, Ale. Thank you so much. I really enjoy. I love talking, as you can tell, and I've loved being able to share this with you and your people. So anytime, whenever you want, we can talk again.
Okay, great, Raji.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.